Welcome to the Sobriety Diaries, friend. My name is Nate. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic and sober coach. My addiction has shaped the person I am today and given me the ability and voice to help others, and I simply wouldn't be here without it. Recovery is possible. The Sobriety Diaries is a video podcast where we share powerful stories of recovery told by those who live them. Head on over to thesobrietydiaries.com where you can apply to be a guest on the show and join our insiders list for exclusive content, early release episodes, and much more. Also, please share this podcast with just one person in your life who may still be struggling. You just never know what they may need to hear today. Before we jump into things today, I wanted to take a moment to thank Exact Nature for partnering with me on today's episode. Proudly sponsoring the Sobriety Diaries, Exact Nature products are made with all-natural CBD without THC, hemp extract, ashwagandha, and more. All Exact Nature products are independently tested for quality and purity. Learn more at exactnature.com. And as a listener of the Sobriety Diaries, use the code TSD20 to receive a 20% discount at checkout. Again, TSD20 at checkout. Exactnature.com. Happy Sober Day, friends. Thank you so much for downloading today's episode and spending time with me here on the Sobriety Diaries. Today we are chatting with my new friend, Rachel. She is an author and chronicles her addiction and past traumas in her memoir, Against Such Things, Trauma, Addiction, and Survival. And we talk a bit about each of those in today's episode. She is also in the beginning stages of opening a gender-inclusive sober living house and doing her part to help with addiction and recovery in the Pacific Northwest. So a lot to talk about. So let's open the diary on Rachel K. Baldwin. Rachel K. Baldwin, thank you so much for spending time with me here on the Sobriety Diaries. We, in all transparency, have been building up to this moment for a few months now. We both had some things come up, but here we are finally. So glad to meet you virtually.
Yeah, you as well. I'm super excited. The stars finally aligned and we got to have this conversation.
That's right. I think now is the day it was meant to be, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
What prompted your willingness to share your story with us today?
So I wrote a book. I wrote my memoir, Against Such Things, and it's just kind of become this like blooming opportunity to speak and share about my journey, like way more than I ever expected. You know, I'm really humbled by the opportunity to be here and the other places that I've had a chance to kind of like talk about my journey. My book was a long time coming. I have 4.5 years clean and sober off of all substances. And it's been much, much longer than that since the things in the book took place. The book really talks about a lot of pre-addiction or pre-substance use things in my life, like a lot of traumas that occurred that led up to that being my decision of how to cope with things. And then it just got, as things do when one is in active addiction, it got really out of hand really, really quickly. But that season of my life was a really long time ago. It was a lot of it was about 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, as I've gotten further and further away from the insanity and the depravity that comes with living like that, it just became more and more of a compulsion that I needed to not forget where I came from and not forget the people that I loved, that I met out there, or even the ones that I didn't. I felt this really heavy responsibility to kind of reach back. And I know that looks different for different people. There's different means of doing that. And for me, it came about as writing. And so voila, my story was born.
And it is quite a story. And I
Yeah.
think you said something that is so important. And I think I try to as well, really on a daily basis, to remember to not dwell on the past, but to
Mhm.
always remember where I came from and what experiences led me to the darkest times and led me to decide to seek treatment and recovery and led me
Yeah.
to where I am today. So without
Yeah.
dwelling on it and without rehashing the past, I always try to remember those experiences and remember really where I came from.
Yeah, and it's so easy once things get comfortable
Yeah,
to like set it aside and be like, oh, well, that was a different Rachel. That was a different life. It doesn't fit into anything in my stratosphere today. And while all those things are true, um, I feel like I have a responsibility, not just to folks that are still struggling with addiction or mental health or incarceration or whatever, but to the people that maybe don't understand those things,
right.
because we have an opportunity to show that people can change, that healing is possible, that there is an inner way of life, that if it that whole adage of once an addict, always an addict, although there's truth to a portion of that, there is something attached to it, a stigma attached to it within our society that means people are without hope and just throw them aside and
Right.
don't see them.
Right.
And gosh, if that had been the case for me, I wouldn't have what I have today. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to help others. So, I wanted to impart that to people who maybe didn't understand that things can be different. And no matter how lost someone is, if we can show up for them and give them a glimmer of hope, that maybe they'll grab onto it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How would you introduce yourself at a dinner party tonight?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I might write you a note.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I am a grateful recovering addict, which is just such a cliche, I know, but it's true. It's true. It's true. Like,
Yeah.
every single thing I have today is something that I wished for so many years. When I was 92 pounds and in a drug induced psychosis and didn't know where my kids were and didn't know what fantasy was or reality was, like I dreamed of what I have today and I have it now. So I feel like a miracle. That's what I feel like. And and I feel like, gosh, I have all this gratitude, even through the really, really hard stuff, that I have an opportunity to be vulnerable and be authentic and talk about things that maybe we're not supposed to talk about
Yeah.
within our society, right? Like the taboos.
Yeah.
Like I probably would say stuff that would make people at the table uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
I mean that's where growth happens, right? Is when we talk about the uncomfortable stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no growth and no learning without that like
Hmm.
little I don't
Hmm.
know. I don't know how I feel
Hmm.
about that. That's when we learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as you know, we'll walk through your journey together and your addiction and your path to recovery. And I
Mhm.
really like to sort of frame our dialogue after that based on kind of what I can relate to in your story. So why don't we start there? Let's walk through your journey together.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna give too many spoilers because much of it is in the book, and I would love for people to read it. I do a much better job of writing it down than
For
talking
sure.
about it.
For
Um,
sure.
but I came from a really strict fundamentalist religious upbringing. Um, I grew up in the church and there wasn't a lot of space for authenticity, for even like delving into what it means to be something other than what I was supposed to do. So I tried really hard for a really long time to be the goodest girl, the best at everything, and I was successful for a time, but it was never enough. my family of origin, uh, there was a lot of abuse in my family of origin for generations, and a lot of not talking about it. And there came a point where I couldn't see a path where I could be good enough to make the church happy and my parents happy, so I just rebelled. I did everything I wasn't supposed to do, everything, all the things, and I went really, really far down that path really, really quickly. It wasn't like a slow kind of like settling into that journey. It was diving head first with like a cinder block attached to me.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, just I'm going. And I ended up suffering just about every consequence other than actual death that one can suffer as a result of choices such as I made. And my traumas compounded within my journey into addiction, compounded upon compounded. And I didn't have hope. I didn't see that there was anything out for me, because I had it in my head that I was, bad and tainted and broken. And thankfully I found some truth in there, and I found that the truth is somewhere in the middle. It isn't black, it isn't white, it isn't be good or be bad. Like Rachel exists somewhere else entirely. And it took a really long time to come to terms with who I am as a person, and what I believe with spirituality, and how I choose to participate in romantic relationships, how I choose to participate in my familial relationships. It took a lot of work and a lot of time, and which is why at the beginning I said, like I have 4.5 years clean, and it's been 15-20 years since I was in the depths of the addiction, because it was a process of like, okay, I'm going to stop this. I'm not going to do these bad things anymore.
Yeah.
But I was still self-medicating, and I was still hiding from my traumas, and I was still causing harm because I wasn't dealing with my character defects. And it's a process I'm still in. I'm still learning. I'm
Sure.
still growing. I'm still identifying patterns. But I've come so far from where I was even a year ago. It just, it's been a journey for sure. Yeah.
I love how you said like your family of origin, because as we grow and we decide, or have the ability, I guess, to decide who we give the privilege, I guess, of being in our lives,
Mhm.
that may differ from our family
Yeah,
of origin.
indeed.
And it sounds like that is a choice that you've made.
It is, it's so complicated, to put it mildly. Yes, for sure. What I've identified as my soul tribe today, my soul
Yes.
family, isn't. Some of them are related to me by blood. Many of them are not. The biggest thing in my life, the thing I'm the most proud of and is most precious to me, is that my children are a part of that soul tribe. That the things that I've taught myself and learned from others in recovery who went before me, and through trauma work, is that the generational patterns in my family don't have to continue. And even though my children were subjected to things when they were younger because of my choices, and because of me being absent at different points of their childhood, they're adults now, and they, like, my daughter's downstairs watching my dogs so I can do this, like I just took my son to the airport yesterday and talked to him the whole way. Like I get to have an opportunity to like show up for them in ways that I didn't have from adults in my life. And I've had an opportunity to make real amends with them and affect actual change in how we dialogue. And when I make mistakes, like I get to tell them I was wrong and I'm sorry and I'll do things differently. And we have this beautiful, vulnerable, intimate, connected relationships, um, where there's communication and there's trust and there's forgiveness and there's calm. Like there's calm. There's no yelling in my house. Like nobody
Yes.
calls each other names. Nobody slams doors. Like we just treat each other the way you would treat someone you love, which
Yeah.
is right. Like that's so simple, but so profound for so many of us. And that's not the way it's ever been on either side of my family for so far back, like so far back. And we get to do it different today. And I wouldn't trade that for literally anything. Nothing. Like there's nothing or no one that could come up and be like, hey, what about this? And I'd be like, yeah, let me throw this away. I wouldn't do it. And that's my biggest gift in recovery.
I love that too. I think to a point you made earlier, a gift of sobriety is the farther we are from that like pit of despair and those desperate times, the more beauty we see in our lives. We can say that with confidence. Whereas
Yeah.
before, there was a big question mark. Like if somebody knocked on my door and offered me drugs
Yeah.
5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I would have said,
Mhm.
I don't know. But now I
Yeah.
can say as
Yeah.
well, confidently, right there with you, like
Yeah.
there would be no choice. So
Yep.
if you are in that desperate time or you're looking for a way out or you're new to sobriety, know that it does get better, and
Yeah.
you do start to see the beauty again.
Yeah. And it's not like it can be so easy when one gets sober to be like, I expect all of these things to fix themselves and all of these relationships to be better. It was not an immediate thing. It wasn't. Like there was a long time where my daughter and I were not friends,
Yeah.
like not friends. And I at first, before I had coping skills, I took that personally. And I built some of my own resentments. And then there came a point where like I got an opportunity to like continue these patterns or like take some responsibility for it. Like she feels this way and it's valid and she's gone through a lot. And it was at that point where the relationship started to heal, where I started to be able to say, hey, you know what, you're right. And what I put you through wasn't okay. And let's work on this. And it didn't happen all at once. It was little by little, piece by piece,
Yeah.
conversation by conversation. And then all at once, I looked around and my daughter's my best friend.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I just got goosebumps. Like all of my kids are so important to me. And the relationship I have with her, I had her when I was a teenager. Like she's been through so much with me. And it's just precious, it's precious. And I know folks struggling may think that they'll never have that again with their children. But I'm here to say, like, there was a time where she wouldn't look me in the face or speak to me. And now she's my best friend. Like miracles do happen if you're willing to do the work and get vulnerable and take accountability and to heal.
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
I want to hit on something else you said earlier too about continuing to grow. And I'm with you. I'm still learning. I'm still always evolving, and my recovery is an evolution and it changes. And, I learn new things. What's something new that you've learned about yourself recently or that has shifted or evolved in some way?
Yeah, like every time I think I've got me figured
Uh
all the
huh.
way out,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the universe brings an opportunity for me to rethink things,
Yeah.
Um, I'm going through a divorce right now, and it is not toxic. So I have learned that it's possible to like consciously uncouple is such a like silly little buzzword, but
Yeah.
like for real, like my partner and I got together in recovery, and we had a relationship that worked for a while, a really long time, and then it didn't. and there was no abuse on either side. First time in my life in a relationship with zero abuse. So it made it harder for me to identify exactly when it was time to move on, because right, if you're not waking up with a black eye and chlamydia, like
Yeah.
how do you identify the red flags?
Those are two
Right?
identifiers. Yes.
Yes, that's a pretty good indicator
Right.
things aren't going well.
Good
None of
point.
that was going on, right?
Yes.
So, like I learned, just even since we've separated, I have learned that I needed to work on saying out loud when something wasn't working for me, because I didn't do that. I had some fears around that, and she ended up being the one to bring the separation and the divorce to the table. And, after some reflection, I realized I feel the same way. And so I've got to work over the last couple months on really advocating for myself when I want something or I don't want something, and to traverse this separation and ending clean. Like I've not ever gone through a big life shakeup like this before without turning back towards substances or other unhealthy coping mechanisms. So I've learned that that I can do that I can walk through something that's really devastating and stay clean, and B, that like it's not all her fault and it's not all my fault and it's not really anybody's fault, and it doesn't have to be this big crazy mudslinging everybody's a bad guy thing. Like it can just be over, and that can be okay.
Let's talk about your exciting news and what happened earlier today, and sort of what led up to that, and how you made this huge sort of life changing decision, and sort of starting on this new path.
Yeah, so it actually just ties into what I was just talking about with the
Yeah.
divorce, right? So something I think that kept my wife and I together for maybe a little bit longer than we really needed to romantically is we have really similar dreams and goals and ethics and morals. Like we really have the same vision for what we want to accomplish with our recovery, and the way we want to give back. And for one of the things that we've been talking about for a lot of years is the desire to open some clean and sober houses. And, there's some other bigger things that we want to do too, or that we wanted to do. Like we have this whole like 5, 10, 15-year plan. And that was a really difficult thing to navigate when we decided to get divorced. Is like, are we going to just, all of that's going to go away? Like, why is all that going to go away? And, like we took a moment, a month, two, to like really feel all the feels about a divorce. And then we came to the decision that stuff doesn't have to go away, right? We don't have to, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right?
Right.
Just like I was talking about before, it doesn't have to be this end of the spectrum or that. And we decided to move forward as business partners. So we are still getting divorced, and that portion of our life is over. And today we got the keys for the first ever gender inclusive clean and sober house in our community. And it's a huge deal, and I'm gonna cry.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Like it's so big, and it's the first, hopefully, of many and many more things to come. And we got our picture taken in front of the house together today with the keys, and we're making it happen. And there's so much support in our community, like so much more than I expected. Like people are just like, let me help. What can we do? How can we show up? We've got people that want to be there. There's such a need.
What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Washington State.
Got it. Is there one thing versus another in your area that you see more of?
Substance abuse wise?
Yeah.
I think she would better be qualified. She's a drug counselor. So
Okay.
I don't really have my finger on that pulse as much, but for what I've seen and heard just from my experience when I was out there, it's a combination of both opioids and methamphetamines.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. We live in a really small community. There's only like 10,000 people in our county, which is great because it's enough to have all the services you need, but
Yeah.
not enough so that everybody can get served. So it's a perfect spot for a pilot like this. But yeah, I mean, really a big problem here is homelessness, houselessness, that it's just run rampant, specifically since the pandemic, in the moratorium, you know.
Yeah.
It's made it nearly impossible for people to find a place to rent, and the rents are so high that it like prices people out that are lower income. And I'm hoping this will fill a gap. I mean, obviously, you know, it's a 7-bedroom house, so there's an opportunity to house a few people, but not serve the whole need.
So tell me what your goals are for the first house. Will it have its own treatment program? Like what sort of services, I guess, will be offered?
Yeah, so we're just hammering that out right now. We have a meeting tomorrow to kind of go over like the business plan and contracts and everything. We have a little bit of a lag before it'll actually be the grand opening, but I don't think we're going to offer services within the household. I think what we'll do is connect with community partners where that's already happening, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
My partner, who's a new kind of partner now.
Yeah, right. Remains,
lives,
that title stays, right?
Yeah, same thing. Totally not, though. She will live on site at the house. So she'll kind of be like the manager of the household. And she has a substantial amount of clean time over a decade, quite a bit more than me. And like I said, she's also a counselor. So she's really well suited for that piece of it. And I'll do all the back end stuff. But we're thinking, you know, I mean, there'll be UAs there, which is, I think, appropriate for any clean and sober house.
Right.
And, you know, house meetings. But it's not going to be an Oxford house.
Got it.
Right. It's going to be privately. So what we're hoping to do is fill a gap where, well, a couple of things. Like we have some friends in the LGBTQ. I mean, we are a part of the LGBTQ community. But also we have some friends trans specific who haven't been able to be housed within the structures that exist here of the really strict male or female type houses. So we want to like create something for them to have some opportunities, but also oftentimes we see a couple trying to get clean together and being told you get to live on this side of town and you get to live on that side of town. And that can be a barrier to moving forward in recovery. So I think that we're considering having maybe not the whole house, but on a case-by-case basis, some couple situations.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we have an opportunity there's so many established, like there's treatment centers here in town already, and there's a mental health providers too. So we'll kind of connect with all the different people and make it like a wraparound service is the hope.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I know that there's such a need in our community for services that are provided without judgment. And I think it's hard to find. And the way that you're describing it, I think is, you know, perfect for the recovery and the queer community together. And I love that you guys are doing that. Yeah,
it's really like, it's really exciting. I've said that so many times today. I'm going to wear that word out, but it is like, it's just a thing that I have thought about, she's thought about, we've thought about collectively for so long. Like, why doesn't that exist? Like, why doesn't coffee delivery exist? Like, there are these gaps that need to exist. And like, let's do something about it.
Amen on the coffee delivery.
Right? Like, why has somebody listening somewhere? Like, make that happen. I will do it every single day. I promise you'll have customers.
Same. Maybe twice.
Yes.
For sure on Saturdays and Sundays twice.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you hope that people hear or take away from hearing you today on the podcast, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they hear that, like, there is life after addiction. There is life after trauma. There is life after incarceration. You know, if someone chooses to pick up my book, the first chapter is a trigger warning because there's a whole lot of trauma in it. But it's there because I know that I'm not the only one who's walked through those things. I'm not the only one who's been abused or sexually assaulted or any of the other things that I talked about and has felt lost and broken and hopeless. And I'm here to tell you that you can heal from those things and you don't have to do it alone. You just don't. That you're loved. And that if no one else has told you today, I love you.
I will put a link to find your book. I will put a link to find you online so that people can connect if they choose to.
Yeah.
Rachel K. Baldwin, thank you so much for, at long last, spending time with me here on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Nate. It's been a joy.
We will keep in touch, I'm sure. I look forward to what the future holds. So thanks again. Thanks so much for listening today, friends. Huge thank you to Rachel for being so open and honest. Hopefully you heard something that resonates with you today. And if we help just one person, our job is done. You can find all things podcast related and subscribe to our show at thesobrietydiaries.com, youtube.com/Nate Kelly, where we upload today's video podcast, and on Instagram at the Sobriety Diaries Pod. Check back soon for new episodes with new stories to tell. But until then, try your best not to drink and be good to yourself. Bye, friends.